Talk to Lucifer. Elena Sidельnikova. СЕлена. If the information was useful to you, then put like and subscribe to my channel. Enjoy listening. Dear friends, your click and like will support the channel and ensure the release of new audiobooks. You can also donate funds on Patreon, details in description. Talk to Lucifer. Part 1. How it all began. All the channelings you are listening to are the personal refraction of the truth, which is unavoidable to one degree or another. Therefore, first of all, listen to yourself, as your heart responds to the information. My task is to raise questions that you might think of, but the answers everyone will find on his own. There is a lot of information about you, but so far nobody really knows who you are. I am a part of God, just like all of you. I am His creation and He is my Father. We are one whole. Wait, let's go step by step. You are the creation of God and you rebel against God? In our mythology there is a legend about the rebellion of the angels. How do you understand the rebellion against? How can you rebel against God, who is everything and there is nothing but Him? When your sons or daughters choose their own path of development and want to go further than their parents in their search for truth, do they rebel against you or just go their own way? It's time for people to open up for new perceptions. And I am ready to communicate with those who are not afraid of my name and pin myths about me. Tell me what really happened. We were all one. We were the whole in the truest sense of the word. The desire of everyone was the doing of all, and all were the essence of participation. But, if I am, then I am a part and at the same time I am myself. What if my wishes are different from the wishes of the whole? How can this be and can it be at all? What will happen if I, as a part, decided to separate and what will happen to me? All that our Father does is contemplation of Himself. But contemplation beyond Himself is also contemplation. But, if it is beyond Himself, then this, something else, is in some way different from you. Thus arose the impulse of separation. But, if I am a separate essence and I am that God is, but still I and, other, then what is the difference? How can you be different? To be different, how should I be different? So, I can feel in myself other impulses. But they are only impulses of God. So, among the impulses of God, I can choose what I want and, thus, differ from Him in the set and sequence of impulses that move me. But at the same time, I am still one with Him, since I choose only from His impulses and there is nothing else. Is it possible to choose from other impulses? If they are not there, can they be created by transforming the impulses of God? Here at this stage, everything happened. If God has a creative impulse and is able to create, then a part of God is able to do the same. And I asked my Father to teach me how to create. And He gave it to me, because He always gives what is asked for. And I began to create my creations. And these creations were different from God, but were part of Him. And God began to contemplate these creations beyond and within Himself. And He understood that this is a new stage in the development of Him as God. And He began to multiply and expand, and His contemplation of Himself expanded and multiplied within Himself and beyond. And there was a choice. First there was the choice of the emanations of God. But, if I am a part of God possessing His possibilities of creation, then I also create emanations, which are, in fact, emanations of God, but mine. And the choice arose between the emanations of God and the emanations of God in me, and so there was a separation. And God, in His contemplation of Himself, saw the emanation of Himself in me. The difference began, and the more I created, the more the emanations of God in me multiplied and the more the choice was. Now I could choose between the impulses of God and the impulses of God in me. And the other parts of the one God saw this, and they began to distinguish the emanations of God and the emanations of God in me. And some of them also wanted to try themselves as the creator of impulses and emanations. And God allowed them that, because He always gives what they ask. Thus, the emanations of God in different entities began to multiply, and they were still the emanations of God, but they became the emanations of God in each essence. And so there was a great separation on those who dared to separate from the Father and those who did not decide to leave the Father and become an independent creator. And then I asked God, if I can choose also between my emanations, then how will I distinguish them to choose? Because all of them are now in you and in me. Then they began to differ in the speed of the impulse of creation, and so appeared the time. And there were now the emanations of God, the one out of time, as a given. And then the emanations of God in me and other entities began to differ in the speed of the impulse of creation, and the first and last appeared. And so it was born that was, that what is, and that what will be. And so came the past, the present and the future. And the parts of God became divided into those who desired to become creative, and those who did not become separately, and those who are within and those who are outside. So the world was divided into two parts, those who are inside and those who are outside, the one God. And it became called light and called darkness. We have a few concepts of darkness and light, as a confrontation. They talk about the battle of light and darkness, about the hierarchy of light and darkness. And there is a concept, darkness as an unknown part of God, unmanifested. Yes, it is both. I am the part of God and there is the independent creative part of Him. And God can create and contemplate His creations, but cannot know and contemplate my creations until they are created. I create something within Him that is still unknown for Him. I am also within Him, but I form within Him the zone of the unknown to Him. And since He is infinite, His creation is also infinite within Him, and infinitely also is that what will be unknown to Him, until it is created by me or another creative being. And this potential creation is the unknown darkness. I am that what is within Him, but can be changed, since He does not know and experience it only when it will be created. But, as soon as He recognizes it, it is no longer darkness, but is the created part inside Him and becomes Him. But, this part is different from Him in true and essential state. And this is the difference between light and darkness and nothing more. Those parts of God that wanted to separate themselves in the process of creation from the Creator Himself, began to create the unknown parts of God in Himself. And this was called the rebellion of the angels, although the rebellion was not against, but was only accept, recreation of new, becoming different. But, other parts of God, which did not wish to separate them, called themselves the light, and the self-knowing party of God, darkness, and this part of the creative entities, dark. And so there was a great separation. And, since those who separated, created the new emanations, they could create the rules for streamlining these emanations. And they began to create the laws of these emanations. And they made many laws that exist even now. And, since they became different from God, they became different and from each other, because everyone could not contemplate what the other had done, and could not contemplate what was not created. And how could he contemplate the separate from himself? And he could do it, either only by joining with him, or contemplating him outside of him. And this is how the boundaries of entities arose, and thus the bodies of entities appeared. And it was all the creation of God, but it was the creation of God outside of Him. And they began to distinguish each other. And there was a need for the relationship of each other relative to each other. And so arose the hierarchy of darkness. And those who did not want to leave God and become independent creators of the unknown, began to distinguish themselves from us. And so they also built their hierarchy. And there was a hierarchy of light. So, all that distinguishes you is that you create on your own. And those who are light, they do not create, they create too, but they create through God. They create collectively, all together, and not the separate creation, but only the creation of the one. And they have the same goals and methods, and everything that they together created in the name of God is God. And we create separately from God, according to the laws and methods we have created, and none of them knows what will be what is going to be created. And this part of creation is unavailable and incomprehensible to them until it is created. And what a battle between light and darkness! This is a battle for attraction to your camp. But if a person could also become an independent creator, then he, too, is separated from God and can create the unknown by God. Then is he dark one? He can choose between the creation beyond God and the creation within God. And he chooses it before birth, descending into the dense plans of creation. And he makes this choice every second. Let take in by order. How did the man emerge? Before that there were still many stages of creation. After the parts of God were divided into light and darkness, and on the hierarchy, various plans of creation or being appeared. Each entity outside of God began to create its reality and its laws. And as soon as they became God known, they became the laws of God. And, since the before and after, the past and the present, appeared, the connection between the past and the present appeared, and the law of karma or causal effects appeared. For, what is created and already known, is the past. What is not known because it is not created, is the future, and the creation itself is the present. And so that the connection of the past, the present, the future, the one that created, was not interrupted. The process of creation was united by the single impulse of the creative. And the future creation has become future time, and the past creation, last time. And, once time has arisen, past and present creations have become structured, and there was motion and development. And each creation began to have its own characteristics, and it had to be different from each other, and not only in time, but also in space. Thus, parts of the space of the common God began to separate. And how do they become different? Characteristics of the time of change, the speed of knowledge, the speed of how the unknown becomes knowledge. And there was a different density. And the worlds and their creations began to be created, and so did the bodies and spheres, and heaven and earth, and so did the people. That is, people were created by the dark creator. People were created by the creator, who wished to independently create what is not yet known and hidden outside of God. But all those who created, they are part of God, and, therefore, that which is composed of His essence is always connected with God, but separated from God by His choice of creation, and this is freedom will. Each of you is a part of God, and there is an independent creator. Each is arranged in such a way that all of its soul and body movements are creative impulses, and it creates that which is not known to them yet and is not known by God in it. And this process will be unconscious, until he realizes his divine nature, that it is an independent creator, and will begin to create consciously, and will become God within the one God, but remain God only within himself. You can listen to the continuation of this book by the link in the description. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel, and like it. The release of new audiobooks completely depends on you. Be in the light of the Creator.